Hello and welcome to Hashtag Matters, the show that, like your pet, eats better than you do. I'm your host, David Grant, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Stella Ingram.
Afternoon, everyone.
Today, we're going to do an unusual show. You see, we didn't do a pilot episode. Origin stories are great, but I think that they work better in flashback. So we're going to do the flashback today. Doodaloo, doodaloo, doodaloo. We're going to introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit about what we're trying to accomplish. But first, before we do that, let's introduce our panel of guests. Today with us is a man that talks a lot and a man that talks very little. So we should end up with a pretty entertaining show. First of all, we have rapper, philosopher, and intellectual rich prophet, Richard Baker.
Hello. Yes, I'd like to say that I talk a lot, but I say very little.
That's true. That's true.
Yes.
And with us is a man that chooses his words very carefully. Our engineer here and co-producer of the show, Jimmy. Say hello, Jimmy.
How's it going, everybody out there?
I'm fine.
And how's everybody in here?
Pretty good.
All right.
It's not too bad.
They're good.
So this has been a crazy, crazy week. And since we're doing a topic that is not a huge main topic, we're gonna talk a lot about what's happened with our trending topics today. I think the first one to start off with, of course, was Trump's speech at the UN. So part of his speech at the UN, which went on for 40 minutes, it elicited both applause and laughter from the international crowd. When he talked about socialism, for example, never working, he got a little bit of laughter from the socialist countries where it's working just fine.
Guffaws, I believe they were. Guffaws. And chortling.
Yes. And, of course, the famous face plant of his new handler. But I want to read one of the quotes of one of the things that he said and just kind of go over the response a little bit and see what you guys think of it. So he said at one point, he said, "No nation on earth has an interest in seeing this band of criminals arm itself with nuclear weapons and missiles. The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary." North Korea's foreign minister, Ri, responded at the UN by saying none other than Trump himself is on a suicide mission. In case innocent lives of the U.S. are harmed because of the suicide attack, Trump will be held totally responsible. The foreign minister also said the dangerous reality is that the gambler who grew old using threats, frauds, and all other schemes to acquire a patch of land holds the nuclear button. These are what constitutes the gravest threat to the international peace and sovereignty today. Ri called Trump a mentally deranged person who used reckless and violent words, to which Trump responded on Twitter, "Just heard Foreign Minister of North Korea speak at UN. If he echoes thoughts of Little Rocket Man, they won't be around much longer." And then the U.S. flew military aircraft further into the demilitarized zone than they have in decades. Pentagon spokeswoman Dana White said this mission is a demonstration of U.S. resolve and a clear message that the president has many military options to defeat any threat. In a rare direct statement, Kim Jong-un said that Trump would pay dearly for the threats and that North Korea will consider with seriousness exercising of a corresponding highest level of hardline countermeasure in history. He also said, "I am now thinking hard about what response he could have expected when he allowed such eccentric words to trip off his tongue. I will surely and definitely tame the mentally deranged U.S. dotard with fire." Or dotard. It's been pronounced dotard a lot, but I think it's dotard. My thoughts just initially right off the bat is that without praising an international foreign power with a history of
human rights violations.
Yes, exactly. Which is kind of what happened when Obama was president. Everybody's like, "Oh, Vladimir Putin, he's so strong. Why can't we have a leader like him?" Without doing that, I will have to say that just between the two deranged men calling each other names, I actually had to Google what a dotard was. It's a medieval term that means someone who's moving into senility, and words like loser and rocket man are kind of monosyllabic.
Well, it was a translation from the Korean language into English. Actually, the official Korean was old lunatic. That's kind of like the slang word, if you will. And the closest English translation they could come up with in one word was this dotard or dotard or...
Oh. Dutard?
Dutard. I like that. You know what? If we look at his hairdo,
Dutard.
Donald Trump is definitely a dutard.
So I'm hoping that maybe Trump sounded smarter. And Korean.
Well, the thing is, Trump spoke for 40 minutes at the UN.
Yeah.
And what you really should do is make sure that you listen to the whole speech, because at about 32 minutes and 40 seconds, he promises everybody a free toaster. So that, I don't know what.
Just by signing up and going to this event for an hour-long presentation, you will get a free toaster.
Toaster tax is going to be on the floor. So, yeah.
Does this only apply for UN members? Or?
Well, the toaster's made in China.
Oh.
So
there's probably a listening device. There's probably Bluetooth in it as well.
Yes.
I got you.
I mean, we're definitely seeing a different response than what we're used to, certainly for the U.S. It's I don't remember any time in human history where a U.S. president talked that way to a foreign leader. And I've seen both positive and negative responses, almost an overwhelmingly negative response. But there are people that are saying, well, it's about time. If Obama had done this a long time ago, then we wouldn't have these problems today. What do you guys think of that?
Yes, we wouldn't have had these problems today because the world probably would have ended.
Right.
Or, I mean, we just always go back more than one term, go back to all the way from Bush to Clinton, back to Bush to Reagan. I mean, this is a problem that's been longstanding since, the world Red War never ended. Communism never really ended. Thank you.
That's that one with the Reds. And the elder Bush threw up in the prime minister's lap, and I believe LBJ showed somebody his penis.
He did. Well, he did. He did. I mean,
and was. He like take dumps with ambassadors and stuff like that.
Behind closed doors, that would happen.
So there's been some reckless behavior, not to mention open racism in the White House for 200 years.
Right.
We have something to reach for.
Hitting on somebody.
That's the next step.
A caca.
But I think of Kennedy and his response during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, a lot of people don't realize that at that time he had back pain so bad that he was getting injections on a regular from a guy that was popularized later
Conrad Murray?
Well, it's a doctor that
it's his first job.
Dr. Feelgood, right?
Feelgood.
Not Michael Jackson's doctor, but a doctor that he was giving people meth. So John F. Kennedy was actually addicted to methamphetamines during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he had a much more tepid response than Donald Trump at that time.
Well, I've known people that don't do any drugs at all that make much less rational decisions than people that are totally strung out on drugs. So it happens sometimes.
Yay, chemical makeup.
Speaking of Trump at the UN, he also invented a country, Nambia. It's a country that does not exist. He said Nambia's health system is increasingly self-sufficient. And the U.S. educated president of Namibia, was in the room with Trump as he made his speech. In public, at least, he had offered no reaction to the suggestion that he was the leader of Nambia.
Did he really say Nambia? Was it legit Nambia? Because I thought it might have just been a typo that we've forgotten I.
No, he says Nambia. Yeah, he kind of put together both Zambia and Namibia. Yeah.
I believe it's good things come in threes. So, we got a Gambia, we got a Zambia, we need a Nambia. Although Zambia, I'm kind of worried about an outbreak.
We're also going to get a Bombiad, so that's cool.
Bombiad? Well, I thought Nambia was like a trendy new restaurant. Nambia.
Honestly, I think this is one of those things that kind of distracts. Certainly, it's embarrassing that when the president mispronounces a country.
He's an idiot.
Well, I mean, arguably. But I think this is almost a non-story. We were kind of embarrassed from what he had said in the in this larger speech, but mispronouncing things kind of just these are simple human mistakes that people make. I think
I'm more offended by his. Anytime he's ever tried to speak Spanish, that's more offensive to me than him mispronouncing a country so much further away. It's tiny too. Namibia is a very, very small country. It's smaller than most United States,
right?
If you will. Now that doesn't mean that it's insignificant or less significant than anywhere else, but it's definitely not right on the tip of everybody's tongue like Russia or England or. Well, England doesn't exist anymore, but you get what I'm saying.
A U.S. president hasn't actually spoken about Namibia in decades. So the fact that
probably since it was created, how long has Namibia even existed?
That's a good question.
Let's find out. Let's ask Dougal. Hey, Dougal, we're not sponsored. Hey, Dougal.
1990.
Yeah,
so
that was
I'm older than
first
it.
time we've
That's
ever
super exciting.
I think I was already producing sperm at that time.
So he also, not only did he speak at the UN, but he also held a rally in Alabama, which that's another thing that's kind of unsettling is that we have a president.
The Namibian president?
No, our president, our current president, Mr.
I would
Trump.
say that would be weird.
President Trump. And by
you
the
mean
way,
Hage Gangab?
By the way, if you listen to the show at all, you because I've heard people that get upset that in the press people refer to President Trump as Trump, and that
45,
right, or 45, and they didn't do that for Obama. We're going to just say Obama, Trump, Bush. It's we're not going to say their title. George Washington wouldn't want it that way, so that's kind of
because we know his wishes.
Well, he didn't want a title. He didn't want a title.
He didn't want to be king. They originally wanted to name him as king, and he said, nah, can't do that.
Right, and so they basically compromised with this idea of president. But we're not. We don't have a royal family. They don't deserve a higher degree of respect than they do as just simply holding the highest office in the country.
Okay, well, two things. One, would they prefer us to say P. Bush, P. Clinton? I mean, there's that.
I mean, it would get so easy to have to say former president.
Right.
I mean, it is P. Diddy.
See, there you go.
Likes it.
There you go.
Let's just say that.
I thought he changed it.
Seeing as how we are broadcasting under the FCC's regulations, that we should ascribe to the rules of the nation and call him Carrot Demon.
There we go.
I believe that's the best. Angry Carrot Demon.
Right.
That's the best.
But I think
embodiment of President Angry Carrot Demon. Sorry, that's the part I meant.
When we say Trump, we're not showing disrespect. When we talk disrespectfully of him, we are. So that's important. We'll do the same thing for Obama. We'll do the same thing for any other person that's ever held public office.
Let me be clear.
Yeah.
I don't know the guy.
No.
So I can't talk about him as a person. Right. I can only speak about the actions that I see. Now, Correct. If he were to see me on tape and the way I conduct myself, he'd be able to make these judgments as well. But yeah, I think he's an idiot.
Well, I mispronounced Namibia several times in this conversation. I would hate for the amount of scrutiny that.
I almost thought you were going to start saying Nambla.
Well, no, yeah, Stephen Colbert made that joke.
I was really concerned for a second that there was a secret that was about to be outed in front of everyone.
So speaking of Trump, his rally in Alabama, he said something about. Now, what position does Colin Kaepernick hold?
He doesn't play any positions because nobody wants to give him a job.
He would have been who we would have had to refer to him as freelance quarterback. Colin Kaepernick,
that would be. He's a free agent quarterback.
Right.
That was his position. He played at Nevada State, or just Nevada, somewhere over there, and was accomplished Division II quarterback. Played for the 49ers, and then grew out an afro, and everybody got all up in arms.
So the president of the free world, the commander-in-chief of the United States, spoke of former free agent quarterback Colin Kaepernick in Alabama, and he said, "Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, 'Get that son of a bitch off the field right now! Out! He's fired! He's fired!'"
Well, Christopher Walken would be a great president.
That's a different voice.
That's not the right one. Mine is either way. I kind of like vacillate between Balky from Perfect Strangers, and Conan O'Brien's version of Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's pretty much every accent that I do, my Jamaican accent. But I digress.
Yeah, so NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell,
yeah, he's the one.
He said Trump's divisive comments were unacceptable, showing an unfortunate lack of respect for the NFL, our great game, and all of our players, and a failure to understand the overwhelming force of our good clubs and players represented in our communities. The NFL Players Union also addressed Trump's comments. He said the peaceful demonstrations by some of our players, or the union said, the peaceful demonstration of some of our players have generated a wide array of responses. Those opinions are protected speech and a freedom that has been paid for by the sacrifice of men and women throughout history.
Amen.
Stephen Curry and the Golden State Warriors responded by saying that they won't be accepting the White House's invitation for a visit. And then Trump said, well, I'm not going to invite you anyways to my party. And then this week, even more players than ever are kneeling in solidarity. And even public people outside of the NFL, for example, Stevie Wonder at the Global Citizen Festival in New York took a knee.
He dropped a contact, I believe, is what had happened.
He was looking for a contact?
Yeah, so he could see.
Not everyone agrees. George Foreman has been a vocal opponent.
Well, George Foreman is an idiot also.
Hey, grill is a great... I use it. It gets
like I said, I'm
fat.
I'm just talking about his public comments. But I do want to clear up. Now, see, Stephen Curry, the Golden State Warriors player, had suggested that he would not accept the invitation. And then Trump was like, oh, well, fine. Well, you don't want to go, then nobody gets to go. And then LeBron James actually called him out, 45, as he referred to him, as a bum.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and that's, for me, that's just interesting. I mean, it's still just a tit for tat escalation,
right.
Rock throwing, dookie flinging.
Yeah.
But at the same time, LBJ, LeBron James, is at the pinnacle. Steph Curry is at the pinnacle of their respective sports. They're kind of like 1 and 2, depending on how you look at it. And so it would be like, in the 60s, 70s, it was Joe Namath or, Kenny Stabler or something like that coming out. But, these are still black guys speaking out for black guys. So it's not.
Right.
America is over 60% white people.
Right.
Straight
Angry
white people.
people.
Well, no, I'd say there's probably it's about probably 35-25. There's a quarter of the population of America is white people that have been around other races and kind of understand that you can't judge a person based on the color of their skin, but the content of their character.
Right.
But there's the other 35%, which pretty much solidly voted for Trump, who have not spent much time around other races. So they have a stereotypical view of what other people may have represented to them as, what black people are, what Mexican people are, what Cuban people are, what, Vietnamese people are. And it's unfortunate because I've found through my own experience that the more that you're around something that you're unfamiliar with, the more it becomes familiar to you, the less scary it becomes and the more accepting you become of whatever that is. Whether it's people that, take their shoes off outside their house. That was weird to me the first time I saw it.
Right.
And what's weird about that? So, I could go on and on and on and say very little. But the point is that America's still kind of skewed towards ignorance and naivete.
Right.
Where we see it and we ignore it, or we refuse to delve into it for fear of the unknown. So, and that's where we're at right now, is hopefully we're trending towards the other end of the spectrum where people are becoming more educated, a little less narrow-minded, but at the same time, the action speaks for itself in that we have a guy like Donald Trump in the White House. And it's, again, personally, I don't know him as a guy. He might be a great father, brother, husband, grandfather, but he's not a good president, in my opinion. He's not a good politician, even, and that's an oxymoron.
Well, and a lot of his base elected him because they were angry about not being seen, and it's been, they talk about it as a freedom of speech issue. They talk about it as an issue of, their jobs being disappearing, the disappearing middle class, or not even middle class in a lot of these situations. What do you think, Stella? Would you go to the White House if you were invited?
Like, my immediate answer is no, but it's one of those, am I really ever going to be invited type things? I'm 90% sure I wouldn't be invited anyway.
Just 90%?
Right, unless I become a millionaire, I might have a bunch of money. So there's that. But I mean, to touch back on on how many people are starting to make a outward visual reference to being against Trump, you have the MLB that's also coming in. Somebody from the Oakland A's, I think their rookie catcher also took a knee during the national anthem, and that one was like, I think he's the first one in the MLB to start doing that kind of thing. When you have people in my generation and the millennials who are going out there and traveling everywhere, and all they want to do is travel, and to me they're the front line of the newest wave of thinking that you're not supposed to judge people by how they are. We're still being run by the baby boomers kind of, and Generation X is definitely up and running right now. Millennials are starting to merge in with Generation X, and I know there's a lot of contention because of it. You have people who are the baby boomers who are afraid of millennials because they may reach a point in their job and that's it. They're done. They're not going to get ahead anymore because they're going to be XYZ age. And then you have this new young person who can do that and more, plus they're going to be younger and have more energy or whatever else they are looking for. So you got baby boomers afraid of the millennials. You've got Gen Xers who kind of understand millennials but don't understand millennials because they'll see some things and be like, yeah, we grew up with that. Yeah, I can see that. And then millennials will go do something and they're like, what? And it's difficult for me to understand that half of it because I don't see the breakdown in the sense that I see people younger than me and some of the things they do, I'm like, please stop, don't do that. Your attention and need for social media is just like ridiculous to me. I don't understand why you have to be Snapchatting every single moment. You don't need to be at your grandmother's funeral and taking a snap with her and being like, oh, boo-hoo, or the teenager that was going 100 miles an hour down a freeway snapping just so that her little filter could actually say 100 on it. Really, that's your existence for that.
Right.
Yeah.
And George Foreman, that was kind of what he alluded to. He said Kaepernick was trying to draw attention to himself and not to an issue so much.
But how much attention can you draw to an issue that is extremely important and has been left on the back burner so long that it is like the grossest, crustiest, gnarliest piece of bread that you've ever seen, without, unfortunately, letting other things on the front burner burn? Like, I get it that we have thousands of issues that are going on. With Black Lives Matter, the whole point of it is to bring their vision and the fact that minorities as a whole, not just Black lives, minorities as a whole are being pushed down. And then you have other people who are like, well, all lives matter. Well, no one's ever said that all lives didn't matter. No one's ever said, except for this guy in Ohio that thinks that people can burn, that people should just die.
Well, you have to explain that. You can't just say that.
I figure we'll get to it, but it's one of those. It's not. Oh, just kidding.
Topic.
So there was a fireman in Ohio who said that he would rather save a dog than 100
black people.
Yes.
He used the hard R.
Yeah, he uses the fun words.
It's back to the George Foreman thing. Yeah. Just a point on George Foreman talking about self centrism and I guess conceit.
Sure.
He has 5 sons named George. George, and his daughter's name is like Georgina. Sure. So let's talk about narcissism and let's look ourselves in the mirror.
Sure.
Right.
I mean, either way, and I respect George Foreman as a boxer, although Muhammad Ali beat the tar out of him.
Sure.
After he talked a lot of smack. So, but either way,
he's got a nice grill.
He does. Yeah.
It's a good grill.
It's a decent grill, really.
It gets all the fat out from under. I mean,
for a countertop grill.
I use my Presto flat top grill, which does take up a little more counter space.
Yeah.
But you're able to do more things with it, in my opinion. And you can get the grill, the fluted grill top for it, so you can kind of get the sear marks if you want. But I do fajitas on there. I grill my burgers on. I plug it in outside.
It works really well. The Grilla from.
So wait, what was it called again? A Presto?
It's a Presto brand,
Okay.
flat top countertop grill. It's fantastic. It has the little fat catching tray down there. It has a lid that flips down, so if you need to steam something or say melt some cheese on top of some burgers. But Colin Kaepernick kneeling in protest of the national anthem is something that hasn't happened in a long time because he has not been on a team in a long time. So anyone that's still talking about Colin Kaepernick, as Stella alluded to, and I'm not familiar with this, I follow baseball, but I follow the Padres, so it's kind of more of a casual thing, you know.
Yeah. Bruce Maxwell from the A's. He's the rookie for there, but
he definitely would have been one of the first, if not the first, because in MLB, you know, they do line up before the game, and
it's the end of the season too. So I mean, it's not. This is
he could be in the beginning of September. They expand the rosters from 25 to 40, so he could have been one of the up to 15 extra players that they call up from the minors. A younger guy, maybe, you know, who wasn't so concerned. Or maybe an older veteran who got his, you know, shot to play at the end of the year. And
well, it does list him as a rookie, and I think that's what it comes back to, is that you have the newer generation that wants to travel and wants to experience other things because, I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons for it. But for me, the biggest thing that I've come to is that since I've traveled too, I've gone to the Philippines twice now, and I've stayed there for at least a month on each occasion. And coming back, it didn't occur to me the first time because I was 5. This was just, I'm going to this new place. And I slept for like 18 hours and I feel groggy and I hurt. Like, I don't like sitting in an airplane for that long anymore. And you see what's going on that's there, and you see the life that's going on there. And then going back again when you're a younger teenager and you have a better understanding of the world, you actually appreciate electricity and like plumbing, even though you don't know it. And then having to go back to the Philippines and having to squat in a hut with no toilet paper, no running water, and then having a race with my mom about whose pee is going to hit the bottom of the hill first. Like, what kind of life is that? Like, you have an appreciation for that. So when you have people who are younger, like around my age or even younger, who want to travel and to go see these places, who want to see how their other culture is going or even their heritage is coming from, they have a better understanding of what's going on. So you have so many people who were going with these marches for women or for Kaepernick, who are saying that he's allowed to say that. Him just taking a knee, what is he doing? He's not doing anything to hurt anybody besides showing that he is at a disagreement with something. Would you rather me take pitchforks and burn flags?
Well, I think that's the thing. For me, I understand some of the outrage from the people that are mad, because as you know, I grew up to respect the flag, Boy Scouts of America, all that stuff. When I sing the national anthem, I get a feeling of nationalistic pride, right? And nationalism is in, okay? It's in a big way, but it's in a big way right now. And so you have this guy who's disrespecting that feeling that you're supposed to have, and you think, well, he doesn't understand it. He's not educated enough, and he's not a very good sponsor of the Black Lives Matter movement, because he's
half white.
Well, that too, and he grew up with an affluent background, but he's also
he can't put his 100% into it.
Right. He's not an orator.
He's half-assing it.
He's an athlete who's not an orator,
but doesn't come from the same background, basically.
But I really have a deep appreciation for right now. It seems like you cannot protest this issue without getting criticized in a major way. If you're out marching and you're doing it in a peaceful manner, if you're doing this, is to me is nothing different than in the Olympics when they held up their fists, and that is an iconic moment. We look at it 40 years later and we say, well, what a great moment that this is representing.
Despite all the outrage then.
Exactly. And then what happens is that you get violent protests, and that's even worse. But how do you protest these issues?
Well, let's just put it like
without getting criticized.
Colin Kaepernick's protest of the national anthem is very similar to another Copernic, Nicholas Copernicus, who in the 16th century AD suggested that the sun was the center of the universe rather than the earth. And people thought he was nuts, and they twittered all about it.
Yeah.
They said this Copernicus at Copernicus #loser.
So
I believe was if I look some of his contemporaries, there was a guy named let's see, who was it? Oh, Florenstein Friedenfloig, who said right here, yeah, at Copernicus, #loser.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the message is not going to be neat. It's not going to be tidy. It's just a simple message of human rights. We do have a situation, and this is a whole other show, but we do have a situation. I've watched it on YouTube and then read the comments where people will say, well, the officer, blah, blah, blah. You can see the video of the officer shooting the man in the back 8 times as he runs away. And then he bends over, picks up his taser, which is what he says that the man was fighting for. He picks it up, he walks over, and he places it on the man's body.
What are you referencing?
It's a police officer that shot a man 8 times in the back. I don't remember where it was, but you can watch it on YouTube. You can watch the video of it, and then people are like, well, it's basically like they're above the law. And not every police shooting is a situation that is the way that it's painted or whatever, but there are enough of them that taking a knee at the national anthem is the calmest, most reasonable way to protest this issue.
Okay, so if you have a drunk father, right, who has always been drunk and always has beaten you and your mother, and you've got this great idea that you're gonna do something to illustrate to him the error of his ways,
or try to.
Well, you've got this great plan,
right?
That you're gonna make a gesture, or and you're gonna show him the error of his ways, and it is going to change things for the better. And so you come home, and your father's been drinking just like he always has, and you make this gesture. You stick your middle finger up, and you tell him he can go fuck himself, and then he hits you in the head even harder than he ever did before. So that's kind of what America is right now. We've always been a racist country. We're founded by racists, and when I say racist, I don't mean it in necessarily that it's even necessarily white against everybody else. It's more that it is a race, and you're either on the winning team or you're on the losing team. And, we can talk about the 1% and stuff like that, but there's just definitely a group of people who have a stranglehold on the way that things are run here. And
they don't even need to wave the Confederate flag, because they can wave the American flag and say that they're
the same thing.
Patriot.
It's the same thing. I mean, okay, I'm not even going to get into North-South or anything like that, because I think it's people's hearts that are more divided, more so than anything. But, my point is, with the Copernicus thing, even in a broad circle, to bring it back around, is they're still debating his theory of whether the sun is the center. There are still idiots out there.
Sure.
Ignorant, naive people that will.
Some of them are athletes.
Well, or music stars. There are flat earthers, and you know what? Pardon me, but I don't know for sure. And I can only believe what science or the latest reports or whatever would tell me. But there is a lot more sense in some theories than others, and I think people that are debating whether the sun is the center of our solar system are pretty silly. I think that people that are debating whether a man like Colin Kaepernick should even be able to keep his job with a protest like that, or be able to get another job and still conduct a protest like that, or whether the other, like our president, and he was more speaking on these current players than he was speaking about Colin Kaepernick, like I said, because they're current players, and he's saying, well, these guys are kneeling for that guy, and who was kneeling for this? Well, don't you wish that they could just, give him the boot and whatever? Again, that's really just undermining
He can go to the UN and he can say, well, wipe a country off the face of the map, and he doesn't think he's going to lose his job, but if you kneel at the national anthem, then you should be fired.
This is why I'm saying is that the racism in America is about, it's always been us and them, a have-nots, and Donald Trump, and he's allowed to say things and exercise his opinion, whereas the people who have not, the people who are in a position of less power, shouldn't be allowed to say that. And I'm sure if you ask Colin Kaepernick, hey, should you be able to say this? Yes, I should be able to exercise my opinion. Should Donald Trump be able to say what he is saying? Yeah,
Sure.
that's America. You know, no, we don't have to agree. But my point, like I said, with Copernicus, 500 years from now, we're still going to be debating this topic of whether Kaepernick or, you know, or whether Trump or, I mean, if we last that long, God bless it. But, you know, that's one of the issues is that we'll never all agree. But I think we can all agree that that George Foreman grill is trumped vastly by the Presto flat top countertop fajita maker.
Presto flat top found at your local convenience store.
Convenience store.
I got mine for my birthday.
Amazon. That's convenient.
Yeah, amen.
So,
Your phone is convenient.
speaking of speeches from a Trump at the UN, Melania Trump gave a speech at the UN luncheon, and she's drawn some criticism. The one particular line that everybody kind of points to is she said, "We must teach each child the values of empathy, communication, a core of mindfulness, integrity, and leadership, which can only be taught by example."
And she lifted that from a speech by LeVar Burton on Reading Rainbow.
There actually has been a viral campaign saying that she stole it from Michelle Obama, which she did not.
Look. Well, she did the earlier speech.
Yeah, but this one was.
It's in a book.
I mean, I don't think she wrote it.
A Reading Rainbow.
What do you think of that speech, Stella? What do you think of the criticism that she's drawn?
I think it's difficult to be taken seriously when you have when you made the faux pas of already taking part of your speech from somebody else, as strong as it was, even if you're trying to let it allude to it, to plagiarize so blatantly and then not say anything. Because no, the first speech, not this speech.
Yeah, but this speech.
No, I understand. My point is that if you're doing this and then you already had a set up history of this, when you actually do another speech that is eloquent and is getting to a point that you're trying to make, you're already going to be at a discounted advantage. I mean, she's got billboards going up in Croatia to learn how to speak English, and she's like, no, don't use my image. And it's not even the first time that it's happened to her. Like, she's had her image used for a whole bunch of other things. I think there's even like a water bottling plant. There's something else. Her face is on a bottle of some sort, and they will not, or her name is on a bottle of some sort, and they won't take her name off of it for whatever reason.
Well, because she represents something in that area of the world. She's the most successful immigrant from that region in history. She's the first lady of the United States.
She also, by the way, speaks 4 languages.
Right.
5.
Well, it's her hometown in Slovenia that has a First Lady branded line of products.
Yes.
That and there's you know, I believe it was like a lime spritzer manufacturer or whatever that wanted to call it Melania.
Was it?
Yeah, but
it was like a can of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know these people personally, but they're guilty by association. You talked earlier about the United States not having a royal family, but you know, there's an advantage and a disadvantage to that, certainly, and that nepotism still can thrive, and in a bit of a more free-form manner as well. You don't have to follow lines of succession.
Well, our last royal family, like 2 of them got assassinated in quick succession, so...
Franz Ferdinand, right?
Yeah, well, I think she's talking about the Kennedys, but they weren't really I mean, I guess kind of. I mean,
that's our closest noble line that we've got.
We had Kennedys, and they were related also to the Roosevelts and then Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
We do have a lineage. We do have dynasties that happen.
And their buddies.
Ours just don't get... Okay, so here's the thing with that is that we have... You can say the queen. No one's ever going to question who you mean until she dies and a new one comes up.
Western civilization.
Hold on.
Yeah,
right.
There's queens all over the world.
No. But my point is that if you're talking specifically in the UK, you know who the queen is.
Sure.
God save the queen. We know who she is. When you say the first lady, when you say the president,
right,
they're only here for 8 max years. So how many times are you going to be able to say that versus where it was in a dynasty era?
Yeah.
So we can't. I do believe in the being able to write out something, but if you're going for brevity's sake to make your point, especially when you only have X amount of time to speak on a floor, if I say Bush went out and did this, I might have to distinguish which one.
Sure.
But if I say Obama, you're not going to know. Like, you're not going to be like, there's 5 other ones back there.
Right.
Like,
yeah. I think because I listened to a lot of this speech that she gave, and I thought it was a pretty good speech. The only problem is that it does not apply to her husband's behavior.
Well, neither does his daughters.
Again, the freedoms and the I guess the reprieves that are given all depend on who you are,
right?
You know, so
of course
she's married to the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all about marrying.
She's
up.
benefited significantly from being married to him.
Well, and the thing is that if what he's doing is okay, then she's supporting something that's good. And if what he's doing is not okay, then she's complicit in evil and, crime.
So if I saw someone steal another person's diary and did not tell that person and stopped it, thus the next day I see that person crying all over the place,
I'm
my
more
fault for not saying, hey, this is what's going on. Right. No. But it's not me. I don't have anything to do with it other than having watched it. It's more of the fact that I'm still guilty by
if you're giving
letting
speeches
this
about
bad
not
thing
stealing
happen.
Diaries.
No, but this is
that
story. But that story came up the other day. I was just reading some Reddit list of a bunch of stuff because I am super guilty of those. And this girl thinks about it 10 years later about how she had somebody, like a popular girl in her high school, a year older than her, was like, here, hide this. It's really special. I need you to give it to somebody. But she knew this exact diary was as somebody who was really nice. And she's like, oh, well, nice girl was looking for this like exact looking diary. I can't believe it. She didn't have a visual confirmation, but she heard the description of it. She didn't say anything. She just handed it off to the next person it was supposed to go to. And all those popular kids just read it like the rest of the day laughing at her.
And I'm sure she
went home crying. And she does. But my point is the fact that she really doesn't have anything to do with it and let it go. But because she let it go, because you're allowing these negative things, these awful things to happen, you are by there just saying it's okay for these people to do these things and have their fun.
But that's a participant. She doesn't retweet her husband's things. Here's my question. It's an ethical question. If you are in her position and you see this behavior from your husband and you have very little say, because he gave a speech this week also where he said, I wish Melania could be here, and she was standing right next to him. She doesn't have that big of a sway over the man, but by choosing this as her first lady issue, do you feel like she might be preaching to the choir? Or do you feel like she's just completely oblivious to the fact that she is ironically picked something that her husband is extremely guilty of doing?
Or she knows exactly because maybe he does it to her all the time. The pure fact that he just said, or he literally said, I wish my wife could be here, and she's right next to him and she doesn't say anything, you're allowing yourself to be already second handled like that.
Yeah, but what is she gonna
well,
say?
I imagine she did her classic blinking smile.
You're like, hey, Trump, husband of mine, I'm right here.
Right,
remember that person who gave you a blowjob this morning?
I'm sure she made a hand.
The first one.
But she can't make
No, she probably did her standard blinking smile.
Yeah.
Okay, well, look, let me just phrase it in this way.
You're an asshole.
Right.
I generally tend to try and slip herpes in every conversation.
Yeah.
That's how David does with Steph.
So it's like she knows she has herpes.
Sure.
And she knows that she got it from him.
And
she knows that he has herpes. She also knows that he's balls deep in the nation, if you will, infecting the nation with herpes. And she's expected to go speak at an anti-herpes rally, just flaming, just engorged with sores down there. Mm-hmm. And so...
Or up there. I mean, it's also
up there, all over around. It does spread. And so, and long story short, let me continue. Long story short, she is red-handed up there. She knows it, so she's gonna. It's all over the place.
So it's not Harry that gets there.
She's red-faced, red-handed, but like a baboon.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that she knows she is complicit.
Sure.
I think even a mentally disabled person, if you will, someone who doesn't have powers of reasoning and rationale,
or varying reasoning.
Yeah, I would say that if we put let's say, okay, so say that they would say like a mentally disabled person has the IQ of a 7-year-old, right? Okay, let's just use 7-year-olds then, so we don't have to talk about retards, right? So we're just going to use 7-year-olds. So if we put a bunch of 7-year-olds with Donald Trump, I think most of those 7-year-olds would say
dotard. He said
that's what I meant. I mispronounced it. Would say that guy's an asshole. And again, this is just my estimation.
Well, then it also comes down to morality. If you have a decent moral compass, really, you see somebody who's saying all these things, who talks about being able to grab women in their private parts, who talks about how people who should be fired because they decided to take a very peaceful and very thought out, to me, way of protesting, and especially since it doesn't freaking hurt anybody. Me taking a knee during the national anthem doesn't actually offend me personally, because what is it doing?
He's
what
inflamed with moral herpes.
But don't you feel
is what
like
I'm saying.
Maybe she's protesting
it doesn't
in a way that
go
doesn't
away.
hurt anybody, and we're making fun of her for it.
No.
Yes and no.
Maybe
yes, because
we're on
she's
the opposite end of this argument.
right, but she's pointing out a social injustice. I get it, and that's the thing, and it's hard because you have somebody who's right there, and she's both supposed to be completely supportive of him, just like Clinton had to do with Hillary and Bill. She had to support him through his presidencies and his race and all of that, right?
Yeah, also criticized heavily for
of
that.
course, and she was criticized for several things.
Yeah.
They both were.
Yeah.
That's not the point. The point is that you have this woman who has to support this man that's doing these awful things, and when she finally is taking her way to step out and say something against it, we're all just looking at her like she's a hypocrite, even though she's probably also getting bullied like everyone else in a different way.
She needs to put the black dot on her palm.
Or
do you guys know about the black dot on your palm? No, it's like if you're a victim of abuse. All right, we need to get this out. Yeah, if you're a victim of abuse, you put a black. If you see anybody that has a black dot,
is that a real thing, or is that like the?
It's a real thing, man. It's a real thing, man. I saw it on Facebook. It's real, man. I believe it was a Russian ad that I saw about the black dot. No, if you're a victim of abuse and you're afraid of your abuser, if you will, have a black dot on your palm, and you like show it to a stranger, and then they'll be like, she's a victim of abuse, and then they'll go on about their day.
Yep.
Unless they're like, you got shit on your hand.
Yeah. Hey, lady.
All you have is a brown pen.
You need this wet nap.
To be honest, she would be criticized for having something
Dirty
on
hand.
her hand.
Yeah, they think she's an Indian or something.
She gets made fun of for wearing a flannel shirt that was expensive when she went farming with a bunch of little kids and gardening.
You're talking about Melania. Well, they also said, look at her getting on the plane to go to Houston for the flood thing. She's got stiletto heels on. No, when she got there, she had sneakers on, which is a much more sensible.
She's going to be criticized consistently. And I think
I think it would have been amazing if she would have been able to pull off Hurricane Ravage Houston in stilettos. Yeah. That would have been something I could laud her for. But back to the herpes. So what I'm saying is she is essentially racked by this disease.
Sure.
And although she's not able to penetrate the nation quite how her husband, Donald Trump, is, she still is essentially given the hand job with these silly speeches that amount to a salve, a bandage on a gaping wound.
But it's typical first lady stuff. I mean, it's like Lady
But it's
Bird
an
Johnson
atypical president. So this is the thing: is if it's like there's no such thing as good cops, they'll say, because if there were good cops, they'd be arresting the bad cops.
Well, they try.
So I think she's a horrible first lady because she is complicit in the diatribes and psychotic musings of her husband.
So,
I mean,
does it come down to that you feel like what she's doing is just ineffectual, not that she's taking this stance? I don't think anybody's ever going to say that you're an idiot for taking a stance against bullying.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the stance she's taking. I'm just saying it rings hollow.
Right, but is it the fact that it's ineffective?
If it were her, I would, they say, what is it? Great minds talk about ideas, and small minds talk about people, as it were. Well, I'm not talking about her, the person. I'm talking about her ideas. Yeah. And I think that her idea of going out and having this speech in the face of, she's throwing a snowball against
her method is ineffectual.
what's the big dragon in Game of Thrones?
I don't remember. Dracos.
Draconis, Vergaris, Drogo. That's the Samoan guy.
The rapper.
Drake is the name of it. Yaula, I believe, is his name, and a bonny name it is too. That's Dragonheart, classic 90s film.
Lin-Manuel Miranda, a couple years back. When was
2 years.
this?
It was
The
2
lady
years
with
ago.
the banana hat,
It was.
right?
I'm sorry, it wasn't 2 years ago. It was April in 2016. He just came out with Hamilton, I want to say, or he was just about to. And if you don't know Hamilton, then I'm sorry, you should look it up. And there's also Moana. So if you don't know Hamilton, you should know Moana.
He played the crab, right?
No.
He wrote the songs.
He wrote the song, and
Some
he
of the
actually
songs, not all the songs.
he sang the song
Under the Sea, right?
He sang the song when they actually go out onto the ocean.
Oh, he did.
The vision part. Anyway,
Candle on the Water.
Candle in the Wind.
Let It Go.
There it is.
Yeah.
So Lin-Manuel Miranda went on to Last Week Tonight in April of 2016, and this was a surprise thing because their episode that night was all about Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of about Guam, like they got dabbled into that, but really about Puerto Rico and how it was just getting demolished, and it is unfairly treated. It does not have the same rights as other U.S. nations is because it's a territory. Not only do they have to adhere to our laws, but they don't get to vote for it. They don't even get to vote for our president. They don't
Taxation without representation.
Exactly. This is we're talking about 1900s, 1800s type style for U.S. And just recently they were again devastated by another hurricane, Hurricane Maria.
Very badly. So
in the sense that they're still roof high of water, and their president, or
not their president.
What is it?
He's like the governor.
Governor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Their governor has
Gobernador.
called for help. He's called for aid a
called
couple
it
of times now.
apocalyptic.
Yes, that his people are without anything at this point, and he just needs help, and no one's listening.
Well, that's I have seen the memes.
You were listening.
I have seen the memes about
it's not talked about.
increased government spending and stuff like that. The president has pledged to increase spending. Right. No, to actually help and down there. So I don't know.
He also pledged to repeal and replace Obamacare, build a wall, and to eliminate DACA.
The wall is coming.
So his, and I don't know. I think those are things he really wants to do more. And this is something he has to do.
Right.
So we'll see how that goes. But the
pictures are horrible.
Well, there was a fantastic political cartoon, which I think is a medium that will never go out of fashion. It's essentially memes. Mm-hmm. They've been consistent memes throughout the ages, but political cartoon that showed Hurricane Maria, headed towards Florida, and then right behind that, an even larger storm labeled as the U.S. national debt, because they're looking at multi-billion-dollar cleanup.
Irma? Irma's the one that hit us.
Irma,
and Maria followed
it was Irma. Yeah, it was Irma headed towards
Florida,
right? That's the one that hit. What was it?
Irma's
Tampa and all that?
Yes. Yeah. Irma's the one that hit us and then tapered out farther up Florida. And then Maria just happened to follow them. So Irma, the big, huge one that was
Irma, Juan, and then Maria, wasn't it? I think it was, yeah. IJ.
Jose was going up the Gulf to Texas. You had Irma going up to there.
Steve
and that one,
Harvey was the first one, yeah.
The first one.
Steve Harvey is a disaster.
But then you have Irma that hit us. We all know about that one, which is super unfortunate. A lot of people are still without power. And then you have Maria that veered slightly off more east, I want to say, and actually avoided Cuba or hasn't hit Cuba. I can't remember. My geography is obviously lacking right now, and has just completely wiped through all of Puerto Rico, and they're just down. And it sucks because I have actually many people here, like I have friends here who identify them as part Puerto Rican and are very proud of that. Especially if you go to the East Coast, you have so many more, and then just all these devastated homes and families and lives and livestock and animals. Like they're done, man.
And they have another dam that might crumble and cause even more flooding
if it hasn't already.
So speaking of increased national debt, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Cassidy Graham healthcare bill and the Jimmy Kimmel test. So there's been a lot of talk about this. I want to get a little bit of the history in first. So basically, Jimmy Kimmel went on and talked about his newborn son who needed heart surgery.
When?
This was a few months ago. This wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, his son was
this
born
year.
only just a few months ago.
Yeah,
Was
Bill
it
6
Cassidy
months
likes
old.
to say it was over a year ago, but it was in May, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like 6 months.
And so he basically said, thank goodness we have good health insurance because there are children that experience this that don't have health insurance. So a senator by the name of Bill Cassidy, he's a Republican from Louisiana. He went on CNN and said, well, I'm creating something called the Jimmy Kimmel test. And if it doesn't pass the Jimmy Kimmel test, then I will not vote for it. And he used that specific example. So Jimmy Kimmel invited him on his show, and he promised him on that show that he would not pass or he wouldn't vote for any legislation that would take away the health care from people that need it. And so he proposed this new bill with Lindsey Graham that basically all of the major health care representatives are saying is going to do exactly what he said he was promising he wasn't going to do. It wouldn't pass the Jimmy Kimmel test. So Jimmy Kimmel, he's in a position where he can either say nothing or he can go on the air and say, look, this guy came on my show and lied to me, which he did. He said, I have another test for you. It's called a lie detector test, and you can come on and do that. And so they've gone back and forth. Cassidy has said that Jimmy Kimmel is just a comedian. Basically, their tact is he's just a comic. It's a stupid show. What business do they have talking about politics? But he was the one that coined the term Jimmy Kimmel test. So Jimmy Kimmel has said, oh, I get it. I don't understand because I'm a talk show host, right? Well, then help me out. Which part don't I understand? Is it the part where the American Medical Association, the American College of Physicians, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Hospital Association, the American Cancer Society, the American Diabetes Association, the American Heart Association, Lung Association, Arthritis Foundation, Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, ALS, the Multiple Sclerosis Society, and the March of Dimes, among many others, all vehemently oppose your bill? Which part of that am I not understanding?
Narcolepsy, epilepsy, Diet Pepsi.
That's from the Sharkskin album, Payday.
Well, I do think that it's easy for even the common person to diminish what Jimmy Kimmel's saying because we saw him on the Man Show.
Sure.
And things like
he's never
that.
going to be able to be president or a senator. He's
a TV star. He's on network television. Yeah.
But he can't get girls on trampolines.
Yeah, which is actually, I think that should be the first executive order. It's just on the Rose Garden lawn
every Thursday night.
Every
Women on
Thursday night
trampolines.
for at least 20 minutes until they get tired.
TV show where you sit behind a desk and become president.
No, but
You're fired.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, with Cassidy and Graham, I don't love those crackers.
Graham crackers and Cassidy cracker? That doesn't work. Sorry,
yeah. Well, whoever Lindsey Graham is, I think she's a cunt. And
he does have a very
long story short, with a foppish grin. I don't know. I'm just pulling out all the big insults.
So I think part of it comes for me is that he's Hollywood, and I know this is something for you, Dave, that comes up a lot.
It's part of the Hollywood elite.
Why are you looking to Hollywood for answers?
Right.
And I don't understand that point of view in the first place, because if I'm looking to Hollywood, I'm looking for art, I'm looking for interpretation. I could be looking for a documentary, which documentaries aren't supposed to have problems. They're supposed to set a problem. They're supposed to let you know about a problem. That way it brings awareness. That's the whole thing. Hollywood is supposed to bring awareness to things. That's why the movie Hidden Figures was so good, is because it wasn't stating anything about it. It was coming out with a movie
showing you something new
that people don't know about, and also contributes to other people's lives.
Ironically enough,
something new that we didn't know about black people and women being marginalized.
And they're mathematicians and NASA and
nerds being pushed aside.
Right.
Well, the thing is, it was interesting because last year it was nominated for several Academy Awards, and the big criticism from the Oscars, it won a couple.
Did it win?
And the big criticism from the Oscars last year was that they were ignoring the heroes because
Oscar so white.
Well, okay,
well, it
hold
wasn't
on.
just Oscar so white, but
Wait.
like these military movies were being snubbed by the Oscars.
It was
and so they
also
were
because
ignoring
La
our
La Land
heroes.
came out, and then you have a movie
yeah,
that's
La
called
La
La
Land was
La
Yeah,
good.
Land.
but Hacksaw Ridge was nominated.
Wonderful.
Hidden Figures. There were all these films that were about American heroes, but it didn't play into that. They could easily do the
Narrative.
same spin where they say, "Well, this is just a stupid. It's Hollywood. What do they know? They're a bunch of elitists. They're comedians. What do they know?"
Well, going back to the Trump comments on the NFL and how players should be treated for their certain actions, Eric Ebron, who's a tight end for very tight end for the Detroit Lions, had mentioned, in a tweet, I'm paraphrasing here, but you tell us to stick to sports. How about you stick to politics?
Sure.
Now
Or
that's
learn something about
TV.
them.
well, but that's also an interesting
Yeah.
statement because he is Trump. Like I said, with all due respect, he was referencing the politics of sports and the mixing thereof and such. But I don't think anyone should necessarily stick to anything.
No.
I think it's a conversation for us all to have,
Right.
because we do have to drown out the idiots. So I'll be quiet.
Well,
Well,
considering
comics are sarcastic, and they do a great job of poking fun at the things that don't work. That's why the Daily Show doesn't work as much now as it did when Jon Stewart was on it, because he would go after the left when they were wrong. He would go after the right when they were wrong.
Or the Colbert
South
Report.
Park this week, South Park went after this whole tweeting issue that we're talking about in such a brilliant
driving
manner.
and texting.
Well, even
Yeah.
like what part of what Trump's trying to do is this to stifle free speech. That's one of the most dangerous-ist things that he's got going, in my opinion, and he's talked about it from the get-go. When they talked about subpoenaing journalists, Jeff Sessions referencing how if you paint the White House or the government's policies in a negative light, that you might be in trouble.
Sure.
And that's ridiculous. That borders on the Red Scare and McCarthyism and internment of the Japanese, and it's pretty scary stuff what's going on now. Of course, you can say that it's all hysteria and that there's nothing really to worry about, but we've talked about it numerous times during this conversation here. It's unprecedented, the lunacy, as it seems.
Doesn't it also come down to that we don't view these people as people? I mean, because in our daily
Entertainers,
socials,
you mean?
right? Well, in our daily lives, you can recognize, supposedly, I don't remember where this comes from, you can recognize up to maybe about 50 different people.
The monkey sphere.
You can recognize up to 50 different people, and then everybody else is in an ether. They just exist. You don't recognize them. That's why when, unfortunately, when you have things that happen in Puerto Rico and Florida, unless you know somebody directly related there, you realize how horrible and terrible it is. But you don't necessarily have a feeling of regret or pain or hurt or anything like that. You know that it's there and you want to feel that, but you might not exactly have it. So when you have that, and then you have something as elitist as Hollywood is, unfortunately, they are elitist. You have these people who can be very disconnected and unattached, like what's her name, Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah,
or then you can also have people who are like Jennifer Lawrence, who are very much aware of what's going on,
but very young as well.
and are very young or very old, and however, like there are people everywhere. I mean, you have
Trump's very old.
Bono gets criticized a lot for talking about Africa and all that stuff. But if you travel the world as an international rock star and you see what it's like in other places of the world, then why wouldn't you comment on those?
But that's the thing, is that you have the ability to have this platform to speak out where people cannot. I mean, that's part of what this is doing too, right? Where we're speaking out and voicing hopefully similar ideas as other people. That way we can get that kind of thing out there. Why am I going to go and look at Hollywood when these people are having a very personal connection and trying to relate as outwardly as it is to the millions of people that watch them? Why should I tell them that they're wrong and they need to stick to Hollywood? That doesn't make any sense. Like people think about how they would want to be rich and famous, and if they had to have a biopic, guess who's going to play you, bitch? So that doesn't make sense to me.
Sure. Well, and to tie a couple of these things together too.
Phooey on that.
Well, there's been a lot of talk about how Trump and Charlottesville wasn't as quick to. He said things that were kind of light about the Nazis, the neo-Nazis that were marching there, and
Didn't handle that well.
Much more angry about people like Kaepernick and NFL players. but also one of the things that I found so striking, back to your point about this isn't just about entertainers. He pointed at the press corps and said, I've been watching this a lot more closely than you are. I've been seeing the pictures of it. Well, who took the pictures that he was who are the people presenting?
Well, he's a superlative idiot. Again, I can't that's just the best word that I know in my limited scope of the English language. He's an idiot. He's I got the best people. We got the best ideas. We're going to build the best this. Anybody who has any sense of rational thought knows that, there can only be one best, and that you're not always going to be it.
And it's fleeting.
Yeah, and it's something that generally you might be the best for a time, and then you won't be anymore. Records are made to be broken, and Trump this whole government, and not the whole government, if you will, but the cabinet and the administration, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. The administration is certainly, in my opinion, allied against the people. The common man that even voted for Trump, that felt disaffected and not listened to and not seen, he and his administration are the enemy of that person, just as much as they're the enemy of the liberal or what have you. They're the enemy of that average person. Why? Because they are perpetual liars. They're here just to continue the issues that we've had in the spirit of, finding the best way out of it for themselves. And that means at the expense of anyone who's going to stand up. Jimmy Kimmel, Colin Kaepernick, whoever, John Carlos in the Olympics in
Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder, who kneeled. He didn't even stand up. He kneeled to look for contact. Anyone who's going to stand up is always going to be pushed down. Like I said, I was going to go back to herpes, but essentially, like I said, this is history repeating itself again, and every time that anyone speaks up loud, they get bopped down louder. And it doesn't matter if we have a Democratic president or a Republican president. It's really about opposing views, and if I could get my one wish, it'd be that people understand that that's just part of how it's going to be. We have to find as much common ground as possible. And unfortunately, with an administration like this, I cannot find any common ground.
It is difficult.
The president is a liar. His wife is lying. His attorney general is lying. It's an opinion.
It's an abusive relationship. He'll give you something that you're like, wait, what? So like the Dreamers, DACA, he gives you something and you're completely taken aback by it because you're like, was that a good thing? Are we sure this is a good thing? Because he did it. We're not sure if this is good.
He didn't do DACA. He was trying to get rid of it. And then,
no, but my point is that it passed. Do you know what I mean? Like it went
it's going to go through legislation, but it's not. He encouraged them to pass it once he realized the situation, I think.
But either way, it comes back down to
that.
But it comes back down to the fact that it's going. Do you know what I mean? It's not stuck anywhere.
Well, it's even like the parent who tells you, no, you can't do that, or or the authority figure that tells you, no, that's not the way to do it. That's not the way it's done. That's not how we're going to do it. That's not how we do things around here.
The legacy.
And then when they see you do it and it's done and it works, they say, I told you so.
Right.
That's his thing. And again, he's going to keep bashing it down. If it springs up and grows stronger for having been trampled, he's going to take credit. Well, it never would have grown that strong if I hadn't bashed it down. That's his style. And again, in the Melania thing, I'm all for anti-bullying speeches. Cassidy and Graham, if their spirit is really in the interest of bettering healthcare for the nation, I'm with that.
Well, they're trying to give it to the states. So it has the potential to be better, and it has the potential to be worse, and it's likely going to be worse if you live in a state that just wants to repeal and replace Obama.
Well, and the thing is, the optics on it do look good, but and again, I haven't read the whole bill, because who reads the whole bill? But when you dig into these things, I think there are reasons why these professionals, the American Medical Association, the Cancer Society, and so on and so forth, why they oppose it. It's because they have lawyers and lobbyists that represent their best interests who have read this, and they said, no, it's not.
Americans are probably going to lose their insurance. By
it's not good.
Is what they're estimating.
Yeah,
so.
like me, you know, I'm on the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
So where does my health care go under this? You know, and I probably should know more than I do, which is another issue of America, is we're a little less educated than we could be. But
well, they also try to make it as confusing as possible. They try to use as much like jargon when doing anything that nobody could understand it.
The whole idea is for a small group of people to have as much control as possible, and if we can wrest it away from them, then so be it. But it generally is going to then concentrate itself into a few people again, and that's the vicious cycle. And again, we'll probably be talking about this on podcast episode number 7,923.
Well, we've kind of gone long, so I just want to tell you guys about one more story, and then we'll talk very briefly.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Just really quick. I heard,
keep it brief.
Just recently, I still have this up. Retired colonel finds naked burglar dangling from his ceiling. Columbus police say.
Let's discuss.
There's a lot of news in Columbus, Ohio this week. We could have gone on just about Columbus this week because that's one of my hometowns, but...
So somebody in their mid-20s was arrested on the scene and charged with first-degree burglary. And basically what had happened is this retired colonel, I want to say, heard noises that were happening on his chimney, and he was like, what's that? I wonder what it is. Probably a squirrel or something. Didn't think of anything of it, went back to bed. Woke up a little bit later and heard like a big crashing sound, went down, called the police. There was a hole, like a decent hole, and they thought, well, maybe it was just an animal that had broken its way through. The police did not find anything. They did do a search of the house. They didn't find anything. And then, so they left, and then he was like, okay, well, him and his wife were in bed talking about it, and then they hear another big, like, noise, like, coming from the attic. So he calls the police again, and when they finally did this search, they see this man stuck in the what is it, insulation of the house.
Why was he naked?
I don't know. They never answered that. They never answered why he was naked. But basically,
that's the part of the mystery we wanted solved.
Basically, the colonel was in the kitchen and saw this naked man half dangling out of his ceiling, and he's just like, I can't believe this is what's happening in my life right now.
Well,
touching your sensitive parts.
Oh boy. I would, so speaking of unsolved mysteries, in Colorado Springs, the Mad Pooper in Colorado Springs, I don't know if you've heard about her.
The serial.
Kathy Budd, I think, or Bude. See, this is where mispronouncing names.
Oh, yeah, Budde.
Yeah.
I'm going with Buddy.
I'm going to say Butt because it makes the story funny.
How about Bude? If it were two T's, it'd be Butte.
Who was the victim, kind of this crime. She said, my kids said, there's a lady taking a poop. So I came outside and I'm like, are you serious? Are you really taking a poop right here in front of my kids? She's like, yeah, sorry. And then she jogged off. She's a jogger. She does this every week. This family lives near a park. There's actually a restroom across the street, and she's bringing paper towels with her, so napkins. It's premeditated. And she's squatting down, pulling down her pants to her ankles, pooping in their yard.
Have you seen how gross public bathrooms are?
Oh, yeah, it's probably a porta potty.
But really, I mean,
is it port o potty or is it port a potty?
I don't know. But the police department are asking to take pictures of this lady so that they can find out who she is and figure out what's going on. She looks like a normal lady.
She looks like Jamie Lee Curtis's stunt double.
She does, kind of. Charmin, the toilet paper company, went on Twitter, because that's where we all go nowadays, and they said if the hashtag Mad Pooper turns herself in, we'll give her a year's supply of TP to help her with her runs. Nice, huh? So, sorry.
That joke was shitty.
Sorry we had so many heavy trending topics, but in a week where Twitter has to block hashtag gas the synagogue because it was trending in America.
What?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It really
I missed. That's why I don't have the Twitter.
No, they had to
ever
stop
since
it.
that whole Copernicus row, I logged out of my stone tablet.
In a week that bad, it takes a woman to repeatedly crap on her neighbor's lawn to bring any sort of levity. So I just want to briefly introduce myself. My name is David Grant. I am a storyteller. I'm a rapper. I'm an author. I'm a filmmaker, actor. Check out my stuff, chalkskin.com. or wolfinwool.com. That's wolfinwool.com, like a wolf in sheep's clothing. I have a couple of books coming out very soon. The reason that Stella and I decided to do this podcast was actually we started having a conversation. Stella, can you tell us a little bit about that?
No. Yes. So I was at work and I don't recall what I was exactly doing, but I remember going on break and making a realization because one of my coworkers had talked about, I think I talked about this on the first show, and that one of my coworkers was talking about earlier today that her clothing wasn't really appropriate for work. And then we talked about it, and then I was sitting at my desk and I'm thinking about it like, well, what is going to be appropriate for work? Because right now I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and that's okay with me. If I were to go to work in a law firm or for the sheriff's department, police department, that's totally not okay. I need to be as professional looking as possible. So that sparked a conversation for me to ask David, what is professional attire for women? Because I'm not trying to tell people that they aren't allowed to wear leggings, especially since that should be okay for girls to wear at school. So why not? There are so many different types of leggings that you can have, but what constitutes as me being anti-feminist versus me trying to make sure that they can wear something appropriate at work? And that sparked off a whole bunch of different things.
Kind of led into the conversation of toxic femininity, which is our first topic. If you haven't listened to that first episode, we talk a lot about that. And right from that point, we decided, well, why don't we have conversations like this? I have an interesting Facebook page, just a personal Facebook page, where I have people from all different viewpoints, ideologies, and they can come on and they express their opinions, and they don't criticize each other in a way that's name calling. They will definitely attack each other's politics, and they will attack each other's thoughts, but they don't attack each other as human beings. They don't call each other cucks. They don't say snowflake, and
idiot.
They don't call each other those names. And if they
was
do,
that Cox?
if they do, I call them on it, and so they just don't do it out of respect. I guess respect to me. And so we figured that we could have these conversations about these issues in a way that is similar to those conversations that happen online.
Right.
And since it's so vacant, it's such an empty spot, that space doesn't exist in the news anymore, and it doesn't exist on people's social media walls. You can hear our politics. I'm neither a leftist nor a rightist. I'm more of a centrist, and you'll find that out watching the show. But I love hearing people's point of views and seeing how they can back up what they say. Do they really mean what they say, and why? And so that's what we're going to try to do with this show. I'm very glad that you've all tuned in to Hashtag Matters. Please tune in next week when our topic will be something else.